guys are worried about losing the tow hook on the bottom, still got a place to put your straps in. If you have a single strap, you can put it in here. This is great for tying down on a trailer. Hey everyone, Brian and Jeff with WorkshopAddict.com, and we're installing a WARN AXON winch on our Turbo S4 behind us. We have the WARN winch bumper, probably the best winch on the market at this point, the WARN AXON.
Which we've already did a video on this, guys. You might have seen that already.
It's pretty cool. If you haven't, check it out on the Wrenches and Rides channel. This is going to be a fairly straightforward install, and it shouldn't take long at all. The WARN AXON winch is easy to install. Polaris has got us hooked up with a lot of the wiring preset, and this bumper bolts on pretty quick. So we're just going to get right to it, walk you through what you're going to expect if you're going to do it, and we're going to start by installing the winch and the fairlead on this bumper. The largest winch that you can use with this WARN bumper kit for the Polaris Turbo S is the WARN AXON 45RC. That has a shorter spool in it with only 27 foot of rope. So we are using a smaller fairlead on the front. You can still see there's holes for a larger fairlead if you were able to go to a wider spooled winch. The winch is going to mount inside this bumper upside down, so make sure you remove enough rope so you can slide it through the fairlead. There is two sets of bolt holes here. One is for a larger spooled winch and one is for a shorter spooled winch. Just line them up to the bolt holes that are correct. Make sure that you use the hardware that comes with the WARN AXON winch because it is stainless steel. Very important, you don't want those bolts to be rusting while they're on top of this bumper because they are in plain sight. At this point, we're going to start tearing down the Polaris. We are lucky to have a lift here, so we're going to lift this up so we're working at it at normal height. We're going to start with removing the front grille. Just pull down on these two tabs. Grille comes right out. We need to remove this black piece, which comes out with two T25 Torx bolts. Remove the factory tow hook, and we will reuse these bolts. They are both 15 millimeter. There's a plate that is basically for the nuts behind the tow hook. That's going to drop when you remove the tow hook. Reach behind and hold it up so that you can bolt in WARN's secondary plate for the bottom of their bumper. That plate in the back can make this a little awkward, and the tolerances between the two bolts, especially if that plate gets sideways, can make this tough to get in. Just get the bolt started and then try to keep the plate level as you screw in the bolts. This mounting plate goes underneath the stock fairlead hole. We had to run a tap through here. It was an 8 millimeter by 1.25. There was a lot of powder coat in here. We couldn't even get the bolts through. This mounting plate gets put underneath the stock fairlead hole. It's a tight fit to get this upper mounting plate in the right position. We had to drop it in the fairlead hole and then kind of fish it back up, hold it, and it really helped to have a second person here to help starting to thread the first center bolt into place. At this point, we're ready to put the winch bumper in place. So we're just going to slide it up there without wiring at this point, just to get an idea of where everything's going to sit, start to get a plan together of where we're going to run wires, and just get a general idea of what we're going to have to move to get this to line up perfectly. Wow, talk about tight fit. That's tight. Because of how tight this winch fits inside this bumper and next to the body, while you're looking at it, come up with a plan as to where you're going to run these wires. On our machine, we decided to run all the way over to the passenger side and just behind the radiator. So when you're pre-wiring this up and you're making your loom, kind of set your wires into place, knowing where you're going to run them. That's going to be key for this because, man, I'll tell you, it is tight and you don't really want to have a lot of these wires showing. The black loom really helps to hide them in the grill, and Polaris is nice enough to give us a nice place to connect the winch that we don't have to run all the way back to the battery. We're ready to put this bumper up into place and just lightly screw everything together. We don't want to tighten it down at this point. Once the winch is in place and you have everything snugged in and all the bolts in, you can then start to somewhat manipulate the bumper where you want it and start to tighten everything down. Man, this winch is not hitting anything inside here, but it is tight. Everything inside is packed as close as you'd want it, and it's becoming clear right now why they say you can only get the 4500 RC into this bumper. Wiring the WARN AXON winches is just simply a pleasure compared to some of the other winches. There's a simple wiring harness. All we have to do is connect it up to the winch and route it neatly through the rest of the machine. And doing this, we're trying to keep everything out of the way so it doesn't interfere or rub on anything that might break through the wiring harness. So we're taking our time in doing this, but we also know that we're going to put a Rockford Fosgate Stage 5 kit in here, so we are not going to button everything up or drill holes for the remote plug. It's simply going to be zip tied into place, and once we have everything apart, we're going to continue to do that. But right now we're just routing wires, making sure that we have things zip tied into place, and we're going to connect up the switch. That switch is really easy to connect, but make sure you lock it into place. That's going to make sure that that wire never vibrates out. Once you push the switch in, you should connect up the wires underneath the hood. That's basically just constant power, a ground, and switch power. Now with Polaris giving us all this connections under the hood, we just cut the big wires that usually would connect to your battery and connected them up there. This is simple, and there is a fused connection that goes to this from the Polaris wiring harness, so it's completely safe to do so and gives you a real easy way of getting the wires connected. Now the switch power is the only real connection that we have to make with this unit, so we just put an eyelet on and connected it to the power box under the hood. From here we can connect the battery again and test this out. Now our battery is a little bit low, and this AXON does recognize the battery voltage. So it is kicking on and kicking off as it sees the voltage dropping too low. We really need to get a battery charger on this and leave it. But everything tests out good, so we're going to put on our rope saver and connect up our Epic hook. We're not using the stock hook with this. We have one of WARN's nicer forged hooks that's there. This is a cool hook, and we're also going to use one of WARN's rubber bumpers. Now this does not come with a winch, and we really think it should be one of those things that comes with a winch, especially if you have a normal Haas fairlea, because you don't want to have any of that chew itself up when you're bringing in your hook. So this rubber connects everything, makes it so the hook doesn't touch the fairlea, and really gives you that bumper that you need. And it also will protect you if that rope ever does break. It'll take away a little bit of the snapping force that's there, although with the rope there's very minimal amounts. At this point we're done, man. This has been great. We'll make sure we test it a little bit again, and before you use it you should go out, hook it up to a tree, and wind this rope in tight. It's one of those things that you do to have to kind of break in that rope, but that synthetic rope is awesome. This winch is awesome. When we installed this winch, we had to remove this little hook that was up here, and that was probably used by many of you guys for connecting up when you're on a trailer. We use tire wraps, but if you're going to use a normal strap, you still have holes in the bottom of this winch bracket to connect up for tying down to a trailer. If you use small or single hooks, you can put them in these slots. I guess if you had a hook that you could connect to this for towing, you could use it also, but it's obviously going to be buried in the mud. This is going to be excellent for towing because you never want to use this hook or this winch to tie down your machine. A couple things to note about this WARN bumper. There are holes here so that this bumper is completely compatible with the Polaris factory grill guard that you can buy. Now I want to say with the 45RC, a couple of the holes are completely covered by the winch, and I'm unsure how you could get a bolt in there to actually secure the grill guard down. So I probably would consider not using it or finding an alternate way to mount it if you wanted to use it. Now there is room in here if you want to mount a flag or a whip for the dunes off to the side. This thing is awesome, and you know, it helps to have someone else here while you're putting things together. The wiring end of it was simple at the end, but having Jeff here to hold things in place and just help me get things through was essential. I would definitely buy that 8mm by 1.25 thread tap. You think that's something that would be nice to have as you're going through this. But other than that, this thing was a pretty simple install and pretty clean. We have a ton more that's going to come on this machine as far as parts and accessories, so make sure you subscribe to not only Workshop Addict, but also Wrenches and Rides. We thank you for your time. Have a great day.